Hi, I'm Ahmed Lamdou, and welcome to my podcast, Create Your Nice Day. You know, it's my hope through this podcast that I can help you prepare for a journey of a lifetime by helping you realize that life is really just one little adventure followed by another little adventure. And I want to help you learn to celebrate that. Celebrating life seems to be a lost art form, but it can become a way of life, a much better way of life. But it takes some adjusting in our thinking to go from a life of struggle to a life of celebration. I'm calling this a string theory because in a minute I'm going to use a piece of string and some beads to explain one of my theories about life. But first we're going to have our vocabulary word for the week. And this week we're going to be talking about the word hope. I don't know how many of you caught my introductory video for my YouTube channel, but in it I did make a disclaimer saying that not all my definitions are going to agree with Webster. Well, that disagreement can start right here, right now, over the word hope. Regardless of what Webster says, do you want to know what hope really is? Hope is having optimism and persistently expecting. Having optimism. By optimism, I don't mean like the glass is half full kind of optimism. No, I mean the kind of optimism where you don't have to worry about whether the glass is half full or half empty because you know where to go to get free refills. Persistently expecting. Hope is having optimism and persistently expecting. Well, what do I mean by persistently expecting? The best way for me to explain that is persistently expecting is where you keep on digging, looking for the pony, even when your arms are so tired you don't think you can shovel any more crap. That is persistently expecting. Okay, so that's hope, having optimism, and persistently expecting. Now I'm going to use some string and a couple of beads to explain my theory of life, okay? See this piece of string? We can use this string to symbolize life, because here we are at the beginning holding on, and here we are at the end holding on, which is kind of miraculous if you think about it. A baby pushes and fights its way into existence, and then when its first breath, it holds on to this life, and the journey begins. And at the end of the journey, when death is approaching us, we hold on again, not wanting that last breath to come. And so we can use this string to symbolize a life. Now I have a bunch of strings here, and they all have some things in common, and they all have some differences. The first thing you can notice, unless you're a complete idiot, is that these are all of different lengths. Some are long and some are short. Well, life is like that, right? Some lives are short while others live well into old age. Also, these strings have different textures and qualities, and that's because each one of these strings was actually designed for a different purpose. This yarn was bought to make an afghan, and I use this elastic cord to make beads. This wire can be used to make a necklace, and I've used wire when my bead pattern is too heavy for a string. This is silly wrapping paper string, and it's used to be festive and to decorate a present. Now, because each string has its purpose, it's best to use the right string for the job. I mean, you can make a beaded necklace, but if you use yarn that was meant for an afghan, it's really quite difficult. And you wouldn't use an elastic cord to make an afghan. You can wrap a present, I guess, with a wire, but it wouldn't look as festive as if you did it with the correct one. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with any of these strings. When they're being used what they were meant for their true purpose, it works out perfectly. Now, even though these strings were designed for a different purpose and they have different qualities, they do have one thing in common, because they're all strings. You know what they have in common? They're all likely to get snags on them before they're done being used. And the designer is aware of that, and so it works with the string as it goes. Okay, not only do most of these strings get snags, but some, if not all of these strings, are going to have a few beads put on them. I mean, that's just the way it goes for a piece of string. Basically, that's the whole point of being a string. But you know what? Some of these strings were made for beads, like the elastic one. Beads slide on and off the string, so it's fun to work with because you can be creative and flexible. It's like some people. Other strings are a pain in the neck to use, like wire, because it gets snagged really easily. And it's hard to get the beads on and off because of the thickness of the wire. But sometimes wire is the best string for the job. But one thing I have learned, wire works best when it's warmed up a little bit. Just like some people. Okay, now we're going to use some beads to represent problems. And I got a few different kinds of beads because we got a few different kinds of problems. Some beads are pretty, just like some problems. Ever have a pretty problem? Ever date a really pretty guy? Problems. Some beads are colorful, like some of our problems. Families are full of colorful problems. And some of these beads are just flat and brown. And sometimes we get those problems too. Those are the losing the job, the dog is run over, or the professional opinion isn't good. There should be a limit on those kind of beads, but there isn't. So here is a life, right? A string. And here I am holding on to the beginning. And here I am holding on to the end. And here is the start of our misconception. It's the point at which some of us have some weird kind of very harmful self-deceit. We see life like this string, holding on to both ends, and we think it's going to be a straight shot from point A to point B. And it looks straight, no snags, no beads, no problems. But let me tell you something. The reason this string doesn't have any snags or beads, it's because it hasn't been used for its purpose yet. This string has just been shoved in a drawer with a lot of other strings just waiting for its chance to, like, you know, get a bead. And let me tell you about this little piece of string here. While this string was sitting around with no snags or beads, it has felt empty, useless, like it didn't matter and it didn't count, no one cared. It was sitting in the drawer just waiting to be used by a creative genius. What this string wanted was to somebody to say, you know what? Look at that string. I know what I could do. I could add a bead or two. Or a knot, snag, or two. And that string would be beautiful. Because life and string is meant to be decorated and adorned with beads and snags and knots, because it's actually the problems and the distractions of our lives that give it color and character and show the style of the person wearing it. I'm decorated with my life. It's not the beads on our necklaces that give us our style. Our style is reflected in the necklaces we choose to wear. I mean, have you ever seen a necklace or like a dress in the store and you said, could I carry that off? Or is that not really me? Well, life is like that. Can you carry it off? Or is that not really you? Now let's face it, we're gonna have problems from birth to death. We know that, but we don't act like that. We seem to get startled when a problem comes up or there's a snag in our socks. So once and for all, let's just accept that life is not a straight line. That's not realistic. And since it gets cramped in the drawer, trying to stay out of the way of stray beads, you know what? That's not realistic either. Hope. Hope is having optimism and persistently expecting. You know, hope comes when we do accept and expect life to have snags and problems. Because just by accepting that truth changes us. And we begin to move differently through life. We think different, we plan different, and we move different. And the best way I can explain that is for you all to think about the NFL. It's like the quarterback knows the other team is going to try and tackle him. Now, how long would the quarterback last if every time they threw him the ball, he acted surprised that people were after him? Not long. No draft pick for you, buddy. So what does a good quarterback do? He moves with a purpose. He knows what he's on the field for. He knows the rules of the game. He knows his part. He knows his job. He understands all of that so well that he's been out there practicing in the cold, in the heat, on his day off, in the rain. He's out there practicing his little heart off. He's practicing his part, so when game day comes, he won't let down the team, or the fans, or even the hot dog vendor. Now, we all know part of the rule of the game is to keep hold of that ball. No matter how much, no matter what, hold that ball and move it upfield. That is his purpose. And you know what? He will run. He will jump over people. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And wait till they try and grab him. He goes this way and that way. But he'll hold on to that ball no matter how hard they hit him. And to be honest, I gotta say, I love it when a runner gets hit by a million guys. Because I love it when the stat comes off and the guy at the bottom still has that ball in his hand. The crowd goes wild. And when all the other players back off, he just tosses the ball to the ref. Like, oh yeah, here you go. That's gotta feel great. But what if he fumbles? I mean, fumbles happen. Sometimes the guys get up and the opposing team's got the ball. Well, what then? You know what? If you drop the ball, act like the big boys. Get up, brush it off, go in for a huddle. Cuddle if you got 'em. Because there's another play coming. And you need to get ready for the next big play. Let's keep the game moving. But what if you can't? What if you get knocked down and you get the wind knocked out of you? What if your string has so many knots and beads and snags on it, you can't even see the string anymore? And that does happen to people. They get so caught up in the string, they can't even see that the knots and the beads are only a part of life. Just like they're only part of a necklace. But when it is one big knot, and you do feel hopeless, some people resort to trying to set the whole string ablaze. And I'm talking about suicide. Because let's face it, you know what? Sometimes it does look impossible. But if you burn the string string is gone, but the beads remain. And other people will pick up the beads and decide what to do with them. And they'll sweep up the ashes of the string. And it's going to be a wrap. But what do you do if you find yourself there, at the end of your rope? You tie a knot and you hold on. Hold on to what? Hold on to me. And what am I going to do? I'm going to try and pull you over to the light. Because what I've found is problems and snags are a lot easier to fix if you're standing under the light. Hope is having optimism and persistently expecting. You don't have to believe. Just believe that I believe. And who am I? I'm no one, but I care. And sometimes when you're down and out and you're at the end of your rope, sometimes that's all you need. Is just knowing that there's one person out there who is thinking about you and who really does care. So come back next week and we're going to talk about string theory part 2. And in the meantime, guys, create your nice day. Thanks.